What's a good way to start, do you think?
Well, the way that I started was I did a chordal analysis, and then after I did that, I found where tonic shows up. And after talking with you, I realized that that's where the bigger stems are. So I, before I drew the humongous stems, I just did like a stem where, because this was a 1 chord. I did a stem here because that was also that was a 1/6, a 5, which was important, and then a 1. And so those were the main parts of it that I knew it was moving to, and that's where I started. Good. After I did a chordal analysis.
Okay, I think we can just start with the bass, and we'll get to the melody in a sec. So what would be your next step then? I'm just focusing on the bass and the chords.
Well, after that, I would start connecting like the
Incomplete neighbors
incomplete
and neighbors.
neighbors, yes, the I-ins. So there's these guys, this one, and then right here, I noticed that you have a da-da-da-da-da-da. You have a melodic descent here.
Yeah.
Like these chords, actually, there's like a neighbor chord and then a passing chord that happens in there, but it's still overall like so. What I did was at first I thought, oh, I've got a bunch of incomplete, and then I realized, no, I've got a whole melodic kind of descent thing happening here. And I guess you could say that's a neighboring.
Oh, okay. Now
I didn't really know what to do there.
That'll cause you a little trouble. If you see
Yeah.
this where you have 2 slurs that are like this,
Yeah.
overlapping, something is not working. This says that these 2, and they do belong to the same chord, so they are related. Can you see, Eric?
Okay, good.
This says basically dominant to me, because I see scale degree 7 and scale degree 4 together. And that means that anything in between here is elaborating that.
Oh, okay.
Now, wait a minute. This says that this must be a neighbor to those 2 because they're connected. See how that's contradictory? Contradictory? They're contradicting one another. So we really need to pick one or the other. Why don't you go with your stem and say, how do the notes around that tonic relate to it?
Well, this one is connecting to that, right?
All right. Now, that's really clean. I mean, you went neighbor, this is a neighbor to that, this an incomplete neighbor to that, and this an incomplete neighbor to that. So far, we're 3 for 3. Okay. What do you do now?
Well, what I ran across was, I think it was this one that was the passing, and that one was the neighboring.
Let me write in a few
4,
chords.
3, 1, and
Back to 1, 4, 6, 5. and just 1. Okay, so, all right, now we got some stuff to work with. Tell me.
okay. Well, this can technically be, like, I put a little P over it. I mean, it can be a passing because it's, anyways. And then here, like, I kept looking at this melodic line, except that it doesn't, I can't do this because it's not stacking a chord. It's not
Wait,
part of
you
that
could
chord.
though.
I
You could, yeah. They're part of the same
Well,
chord.
yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could do that.
Okay. And then this is still a step down, so I could still consider that from this to this an incomplete neighbor. Or I could consider this passing. This is where I got confused. Because I
Okay.
saw that I could keep connecting and I didn't know where to stop.
So you're saying I see a stepwise line
Right.
all the way to here. Once you do this though, oh, and by the way, when you have a stepwise line, you really need to know what's embellishing what. Because that line in and of itself did not help. Whenever you have something that goes by step down, you got to really figure out what in there deserves a stem. And if it's like this, then we need, you need to do something like that. Another thing is that if this is most stable and deserves the stem, and we're going to slur to something else with some stepwise motion between, these 2 notes need to belong to the same chord. That's why this is totally good to do what you did right there. to connect this and this, well, they're part of the same, they're part of the dominant seventh. You
If those
need
two
the
are-
two notes that are under the boundary tones to belong to the same chord, at least conceptually, like 5 and 7. Those two chords, they're different chords, but they're conceptually the same. You see what I mean by that?
Because you could still stack them with each other.
All the notes of a 7 diminished chord fit into a dominant, and so that's a no-brainer. You can connect them up with one another. And there are other ways to work that too, but that's essential. Now, here's a tonic in root position. How do you feel about it?
Well, it's a tonic, so I put a stem on it. Did I not put a stem?
How do you feel about this 4/6?
And,
Go ahead, what's its role? You can mark it.
well, it's another, because it's going to this B.
To
back
the
up-
D?
Or D, yeah,
Mhm.
the E to D. Because it's not in root position, and it's kind of like a little predominant to the dominant that's happening, but
Very
it's
nice.
still not like a root position dominant, so it's not a powerful, or predominant, so it's not powerful, but I still made this little connection here.
Good, Erin. That's a nice first start. Why don't you give her a
Woohoo!
nicely done.
That is not easy to do. He stands up here in front of you people.
All right, now, at this point, we have a good sense at a real local level of what belongs to what. We've grouped things up, but the whole idea is to go back a step. And so even notes that are stemmed, we would like to start seeing how they relate to one another. Marcel, do you want to start with that for us?
What?
Do you want to start grouping some of these things together? Like, can you relate other chords back to this one?
Other chords. Sorry, can you explain again to me? Because I don't understand. really.
Could you write, if you're thinking phrase model, could you write T and go on for some time?
Okay.
Just
Something like
explain one thing for me. This doesn't make sense, sort of in a,
Yes.
like it's
This is-
non-grammatical, you know what I mean? It doesn't fit grammar of this kind of music. So where does that dominant resolve?
This dominant resolve here, and this is predominant.
Good, so put a T underneath that tonic and you've solved it. Put it right up there.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, now that's nice. Put them in here.
Woohoo!
Good. Yeah. Now I'm gonna take another person into the mix here, so you can have a seat. And let's see if he does this. And this is not Schenker. This is thinking about elaboration of chords and harmonic function. But we can use that to get at what Schenker would do here. How would you start to show this harmonic relationship using slurs?
We just slur the G all the way over,
To,
well, all the way over to right there, yeah.
wow, I can do that.
Is that his stem?
Yeah.
But you've got,
We do need to do some stemming,
Oh,
longer
oh, yeah,
stems.
or-
closer.
Okay, well, yeah, are we doing, or do you take it to the 1/6?
I'll work with you. Okay, let's go. Now, I'm gonna cross this divide here, so we're gonna have to find how this relates to that tonic too. And in a sense, then, we're to do that, we're carrying this line all the way to here. So to do that, to relate this all the way back, we really should write T, line, predominant, dominant, tonic, right?
Oh, yeah.
Exciting footage right there. Extreme sports and the thing.
Probably ultimately back to a tonic, dominant, tonic.
Yes.
You almost have to do that, right?
You're gonna get there, that's good. So you're jumping to the ultimate, which is really what you wanna do. So you know what, we could just start at that nitty-gritty level and then jump right to the end and go, you know what, this is gonna be huge, that's gonna be huge, and this is gonna be huge, and we might as well just do this right now. At least, you know, if for the moment the piece is this phrase, we're just isolating and calling, this is the piece right here, then that's the Bas Brechem. We've pulled those elements out. So right on, go there, you know? Okay, and then you kind of work to the middle a little bit. So we worked at the foreground, so to speak, note-to-note relationships, chord-to-chord relationships. And then we stepped back and went all the way to the background and said, well, we need a Bas Brechem. We need the bass arpeggiation. We need a 1, we need a 5, we need a 1. That's the skeleton. Now we need to get some tendons to hook up the foreground stuff to the skeleton. All right, so let's do the slur. That's a good first step right there. To go all the way over to here and say that's all tonic. And that slur tells us that this relates back, that quarter note relates back to this half note. Good start. This relates to opening tonic as well. Add that slur in there. So these are incomplete neighbors.
Why would you not call that double neighbor?
Yeah.
Together they form a double neighbor.
Oh, okay.
Good.
Okay.
So two double neighbors in this configuration produce a double neighbor pattern. All right. Can we go further? See, this is unconnected, right? But that's a no-brainer. What will I do with it? It's tonic too, right?
Mhm.
Use a slur to show belonging. Remember, slurs show two different kinds of things. They're both belonging. One is they're part of the same chord. That's one of those. That slur means they are both notes of a tonic triad.
What's the other, it's like a passing tone or a embellishment or what? You said there's two.
It's this kind right here.
That kind, okay, yeah.
Where it's some kind of less stable thing being related back to the more stable. Incomplete neighbors are the prime example of that. So this slur does not mean that they belong to the same chord, but it means that note belongs to the note with the stem on it. So you need that stem there, or you don't know which one is more stable. But this is really da 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 da, and there needs to go to there. You know, not there and then escape tone or something. You know, it doesn't sound that way. 3 is the goal, and so we need the stem. So if you have a slur that's between two things that are from different chords, you need to stem one of them, or else we don't know which is embellishing which. See the point there? Say that again, I'm sorry. If you've got two things like this, where they're not in the same chord, you need a stem, or else we don't know which one's embellishing what.
So the more stable one needs to stem.
Mm-hmm. Now, that's not always true, because once we do this and we can relate it back to this, when we know that that's part of the tonic triad and that's the main thing going, then I don't really need that stem anymore.
So the reason that, for instance, because I think when I did it, I interpreted it a little bit different. But I think I put a stem on one of those 5 chords.
Oh, okay.
But because we're saying that this whole thing is basically, are we saying that this is basically an embellishment, all of the tonic, those whole first?
Yeah, all the way to
That's, we're basically saying this. So we would not put stems on any other chord besides 1, since it's not tonic.
Actually, you can stem something in here just to show, and it's not, you don't want it to compete with this.
Right.
So you wouldn't make it a half note, but you can stem one of these. Which one would you pick out of these two? They both belong to the dom, but you stemmed one of them though. Which one do you think it was?
Probably the first one, because I would see the second one as leading into the one, like a
Mhm.
neighbor tenant into the one.
What are some other reasons why you might want to pick?
It
Well,
calls
B.
a strong B.
Strong B.
Yeah.
And what, Eric?
Isn't it sequentially descending, da, 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 da?
Good. You're always looking for those stepwise connections.
Now, would
That's
you
a
ever
nice-
put like stems on those for the C, B, A, G?
BAG.
C, I mean, down to the G, the tonic G.
Oh, this one?
Like those four, would they or not? be
Oh, the
stemmed?
You could stem them if you like, as long as you clarify what's more prominent out of that bunch, which is more stable. This though, I would not want to really stem it because it's so, it would just give it a lot of prominence. Now, you could, I mean, but you might do this if you want to make it look subordinate to that. That would be fine. But at some point, you start to back up and you do less stems.
And does the note
so
ever
it's
have
less
two
cluttered.
stems, like up and down or not?
Yeah, you could do that.
You can do that.
It's, you're kind of you're saying that note is shared by a couple
Okay.
voices then. That can happen.
I mean, I was thinking like with the G at the end, if you stemmed before coming down, would it go both, stem up and down? But
Would this stem both ways?
No, I meant,
C,
that would go, the tonic right there.
Oh.
Yeah, if,
I see, if you wanted
like,
to show
if
that
you-
it
yeah, or
was.
something,
Well,
but,
no, that makes good sense there. You could say this is like the tenor invading here and taking over for a moment. Yeah, you could do that. That's a nice idea. Good creative thought there too. Now, if I want to pull this note out of the bunch like you're saying, Phil, which makes a lot of sense, for three reasons we've noticed. That it sounds stable, more stable than the leading tone. It's prominent because of its position in the measure, and then the stepwise connection involving it. So if we see the stems here, these three, we can tell that this is subordinate to this, and that's passing in between the two. That clarifies a lot of stuff. And then I could even do this if I want to. And sometimes if you want to make it really clear, you can make it cross. See how the slur crosses that stem? Then you're saying that on a bigger scale is passing motion between two notes of the tonic. Try it. Now, does that make sense? That's cool. I mean, that's really clean. I can see exactly how this relates to these two notes and how this relates to those and how those tie back to the tonic, which is related back to the opening tonic. That's great. That really shows the relationship of every note to every other. Nothing in the bass thus far is left unaccounted for. That's what you want. It forces you to make a decision, and sometimes you kind of want to be ambivalent, but this forces you to make a call and say, here's how I would do it. You can always make another graph later, okay? Just like you can always perform it again, but you can only perform it one way at that moment. Yeah.
Are we allowed to like make slurs going above if it's getting too slurry below?
Yeah. Mhm,
Okay,
that's
because
true.
I find I get a
I
little.
could do this up here,
Yeah.
but I kind of like to go down when this line goes down and back up. That looks neat to me.
Yeah, I don't mind that. Like what we just said, that B, A, G, E back to that. Like I do a little upward slur just
Oh, I
because
see.
there's a lot of stuff happening there.
You might want to then stem this upward so that
Okay.
this slur can cross the stem. Just to show that you mean to be crossed, you're involving that note as passing motion. That's a matter of taste though. Now this, if we want to show its prominence, don't forget that you can do this. So Aaron, you can kind of do what you wanted, I think, there. You can bring it to prominence in that way. All right, now that's some good work right there. That's good. It's a good start. Now we need to deal with the top part. So Eric, you want to give it a shot? Maybe get us, this is a tangle of stuff in here. You can either get us to this part, or what I would prefer to do, if I were starting it out, is I start at the end and I work backwards. And I've left out these big runs in here, so let me just make sure you got the score nearby.
I can remember what I did, I don't know if it's right or not, but.
Okay. Cool.
I did that as a, like that, and that with stems, all the way over to, let's see, starting here, and then, yeah, right there, like that, and went all the way across.
Wow, that's really good. Now, you've got a predominant there. See that 4/6? This one?
Right.
Since you've got it, what did you do up here?
Well, in my middle ground, I actually brought this middle section coming down as well, like mirroring it. Da, 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 and then it landed there, but I didn't have that in the, like as the most, because if you're looking at descending, unless you're holding D all the way across to here, I guess you could. But because there was no really clear CB because of the cadenza that goes up and down.
Ah, okay.
So, I mean, otherwise you're kind of grabbing it as a 16th note as it passes. So.
Yeah. Now, here, know this, that generally speaking, you pick notes late for your
Okay.
descent.
Well,
And
that's what I
then
wanted to
this, you could tie into your tonic
Okay.
expansion at the beginning, the prolongation of tonic through this bar. So,
So would you have this go all the way across to here?
yeah, that's
Okay.
true. Now, this is, you're thinking right here, so I'm gonna do this, and I'm just gonna say, you know what, that ties into here. So this, that should be big, yes. And these two depart from it. Now, I'm gonna fill those in.
Okay, right.
And that's a first try, but then it regains.
So it's gonna go here.
The actual.
Oh, right there, so where is it?
Okay, now we can work. So I want to do, let me do this.
Right, okay.
Okay, this is all good, but I just need to do this to correspond to this
Right,
connection
okay.
over here. Okay, now I'm gonna move this just a hair up so we got lots of room there. Okay,
So is this going to be just implied to C somewhere in that cadenza, that basically you've got a C going down to the B? Or how do you?
you know what, I'd like to think about how that C actually does pop out, because it is pretty.
Well, it
prominent.
pops out on beat 3 when it goes to the, to the predominant with the 4 chord, right? It's up high.
Yeah. Now, notice that it's up high and low, right?
You know, it's nowhere
Look,
else.
look at the one chord just before it. The run starts on D, right?
Mhm.
And it goes a whole octave up.
Right.
So D to D, and then when the chord change
You
happens,
see,
C, and then an octave down to
Right, to
C.
C.
In a way, to run the whole scale, you could think of that as
and which
adding
would-
prominence.
Which
to
would you
the C.
mark it as the octave, or how would you mark it on here? Would you put it like would you do it like,
I'm missing some notes there, aren't I?
I mean, if you,
No, it's the next one.
so it's this one over here.
So this is actually repeated, and I'll just do this
Yeah,
one
so,
around that.
and then that's where the
Okay.
line goes up.
Right.
And then it'll be 3, you actually get into C, I mean, it
I'll
starts
do
coming
this
down,
to
okay?
show
And then that's C.
this there, and then that C will end up all the way
It'll come down to there.
to there. Sometimes you see this kind of
Oh, okay,
line
okay.
business, because you don't want to spend all the time drawing all that stuff in. It's a sketch after all, you know, so you don't
Right.
want, you don't have to.
But is it
be
really
able to-
then going from here to here?
Okay, that works really well. And then we'll have to use a 3 that follows it.
Well, you've got a 3 right in here.
Good, that works. Now that's a 6/4,
Right.
that's very unstable. But it's okay, why is that all right to use that B? Do you know? We saw this last time. This happens a lot.
Is-
Part of it is that there's melodic integrity to it. It is prominent melodically, and you're trying to give it its due as a melody note. But there's something else here.
Is it predominant? Not really.
Not really.
Oh,
Here.
it's 3, 2, 1. It's going 3,
Yeah.
2, 1.
Yeah, that's the melodic integrity. It's part of that descent. Intervallically, what is it? The B is a
6 above the
6. Because it's consonant, you can use it. That's enough to say it's supported. If it were dissonant, we would know that. We would not use it. Okay, so show us, how's this going to look?
It's gonna be this way here, right?
Good.
And that right there. And there's your descending. B, C, B, A, G.
Great. Good. Can you connect from
Okay.
this measure here and show us what do you do in the meantime before the descent? Pretty easy, isn't it?
I guess I'm not sure what you're asking me, sorry.
There are a lot of notes there, but they're not all connected, so tidy it up a little bit. I see a G
Well,
first off.
this is gonna come down to that, is that right?
Good. And why is that slur right on? What does that slur mean?
Well, it's in the triad. It's in the
Motion
chord.
within the same chord. Good.
Yeah.
So you're connecting notes that belong together.
Now, do I really have to have all three of those there since they repeat?
You're on the right track. Yes,
Yeah, we
absolutely.
need all that, right?
That's true.
In
Now,
fact,
you might
you-
want to show one of them to correspond
Okay.
with the A in the
Okay.
bass, but then you can tie,
You
just
just
tie
keep
it.
tying across?
Yeah.
Same thing here?
Good. And now make sure they connect back up to the D that preceded them, almost a big arrow.
This one?
Yeah.
So you're gonna come back to here?
Yes, that'll work. Good.
Now, what do you do with this here?
Now that all you can view as stepwise motion.
Okay,
Now,
so just all you do
this-
is that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right. And now you've tied all this stuff back in. We could do one more here to show,
Mhm.
okay, that's all just arpeggiation.
And do something here, that is there? Or not?
Nope, not there, because that's gonna be, this is that.
Okay, right, okay, got you, okay, sure.
That's great. Now all you need to do is do this
Well,
and
those
work.
are just gonna be, where you go like this. And they're all in the chord.
Yeah, okay, that works.
Like that.
Almost. We really do need to connect everything, so
Okay.
we'll just do a lot of little slurs between individual notes.
Like this.
That works, yeah. As long as we just see that they belong, they cohere together. Give the man a hand, that was great.
Woohoo!
Okay, so he opted for going to the end and looking for the big picture, kind of like, so Eric, you did that in both. You did it for the bass. We started with some detail stuff, but then you jumped right into saying, here's 1, here's 5, here's 1 again, that's the boss breaking, good. And up top you did similarly, here's my point of departure, the D, that's called Kopftone or head, Kopf is head. Primary tone in English is the normal word for that. So the primary tone D, and then the descent to the G at the end, just working backwards. There's a G, there's an A, there's a B, and then we had to sort out, okay, how are we going to get there? How are we going to connect from the D at the beginning to that C in the penultimate measure? Now we do have some things to sort out up here. I'm just going to assert that this note is the main note in that measure. Basically what I want to do is if I've got a main chord down here, not main chord, but if I've got a chord here and I've got a stem, I want something to correspond to it. It's this counterpoint idea. If I've got a main note up above, I'm going to look for support for it. If I've got a chord down here, I'm going to look for something that is being supported up above. I want to see how the two parts interact with one another. So if I take this as the main note in this measure, part of this 4 chord here. By the way, what's its function? That 4 goes to a 1/6, so its function is plagal. Good job. Plagal chord. Plagal cadences 4/1. Plagal function 4/1. That's what's going on here. So if this is a neighbor to there, what do you want to do with this E? By the way, I can relate all this other stuff.
The E's gonna go to the D, right?
To the which?
To the D.
Next measure?
Mhm.
Right on, that's good. So I can go like that and show how it relates to this. Now, if I really want to make it obvious that that is a neighbor tone to the D, that'll tell that story visually. Connect these up because they're all it's just arpeggiation. This note hangs on. What's that called?
Suspension.
Suspension, good. So if we wanted full figures, we'd say that's a 4/3 suspension in there. Now let's back up a little bit. Okay, what's the main other note? That is the main note for this one chord here. What should I do?
Would you put are you talking about like that fourth measure? Slur the B to the G because they're within the same chord.
Okay, good. What's this? It's F sharp, but what's it doing? What's its job?
It suspends as well.
Yeah, you can think of it as a suspension, but that note, what is it in the...
Retardation.
Or anticipation.
Anticipation, I mean, it's a,
Except that's not a chord tone. Actually, neither of them fit their chords, do they?
No.
So what's going on?
passing tone.
Passing. Rearticulated and held over across that bar line, but that is basically an accented passing tone, if you like that symbol. It's not exactly a standard symbol, but you can use it. It's an accented passing tone. Now, in terms of our symbols, we just do this. We say, that's the main interval, and we're filling it in with that. Now, I know that's potentially confusing, because it looks like you're saying that those two belong together, but they don't actually belong to the same chord. We're really trying to show that that's a passing motion in between them. So you need to know that because of your musical knowledge, not because that's explicit. It's not. See what I mean by that? Conceptually, you could try and make them as part of the same chord, but in some cases they won't be, and you're just trying to show that that's passing.
Is there a particular reason you make a slur over or under, or is it just for cleanliness?
Just calling.
Okay.
I could have put that over top too. In fact, that might have been neater, but it doesn't really matter that much. I'm going to join these all up because we're in the dominant here, on the dominant chord, and we've got two inversions going on there. So really, all these things could be tied into one another, if you like. But there is another possibility here too, which is to say that I'm not going to slur these to these other fellows because they belong in another part. In other words, compound melody thinking. And then you could say that's an inner voice. And actually, I should probably do this, right? That is more stable than the leading tone. So the stem can show that. And then if I really want to have that with a downward stem, I can do this and it's clear what's going on. Now, that note actually ends up down here, and so you can use a line to show that it ends up there and then resolves. But it's an inner voice thing. It's not the main part. So when this goes 1, 5, 1, look how neat this is, okay? 1, 5, 1 goes 5, 4, 3 up there. One main note per chord. That's the kind of thing that you want to have happen because you want to show the counterpoint. You want to show that there is a melodic entity that goes with each of those chords. The 1, 5, 7, and inversion, and the 1. Okay, so having three main stem notes here is very appealing as sort of this sort of analytical aesthetic. You know, it looks nice, it's what you want, it's pretty, it's clean. You've accounted for things. Things are as they should be. You know, that works nicely. So in the big picture, just to step back and see what we've found here. There is a descent from this note D, scale degree 5. This is called a 5 line. It moves by step here on its way down, hangs out on that 5 for a good while in the middle, but before it even gets back to that, there's this sort of feint into an inner voice. It's this descent, 5, 4, 3, but because you regain the 5 and then descend again, this becomes viewed as elaboration of the opening tonic, and the job of descending to closure is delayed until back here, the end of the phrase. See how that works? Okay, so motion from the tone down to this 3, regain your D, but you do it through this incomplete neighbor here. Get to that D, regain it really. And then some fireworks on your way, but you're gonna do 5, 4. Each of them has a big long scale attached to it, after it, before it. And then you head on down with some nice arpeggiation, close it off. Bass-wise, double neighbor to elaborate your tonic. Elaborate it further by an incomplete neighboring motion, just like the top part does. Notice how that's in parallel tense there, isn't it? That line just means hey, those belong together. Okay, so now you're on a 1/6, still tonic. Then we're going to get pretty elaborate here, but we're basically going down by steps through a dominant, back to our tonic. And now we're getting ready to cadence. So we do an incomplete neighbor chord to the dominant, that's our predominant there, relating to the dominant, the slur shows it. And then we're ready to cadence 5 to 1 in the bass. Now we should have every note connected in to the skeleton, so to speak, of that descent, and your descent up top, fundamental line, and the bass arpeggiation. If we've got them all accounted for, at least we know we've been thorough. Okay, that's a minimum. We have to be thorough. We have to explain everything and really make some judgment calls. Any questions about what we've done?
Every note need to be slurred.
Well, not necessarily, well, within a slur or something. But yeah, you have to be able to see how it relates to everything.
So almost every note.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Leave no note uninterpreted.
Okay.
Yeah, interpret everything. Make sure you have a place for it. You know how it relates to its surroundings.
So as far as bass notes are concerned, like just actually writing in a bass note on your analysis in general, like, you know, whereas this one began with those arpeggiations, it's okay to just write in the root of that chord, or the bass of that chord.
Yeah, I automatically go, if it's a Alberti bass, it's going to go, da dee da.
Right.
Now, I know that it's arpeggiating through that chord, but if I were to play it as a block entity, like chorale kind of texture, the lowest note in that Alberti bass is the real bass.
Okay.
So yeah, when you've got a fancy presentation of the chords, don't let it fool you. That lowest note is the D bass note.
And then the same thing like with the 16ths, later on in the right hand, you basically just put, or even the measure before it, or the really fast thing, you just put the bottom and the top basically. And that was,
there we can. That line means you're going to fill that in by step.
okay.
And we could have done all the detail, but you know that doesn't. That's enough.
Yeah.
So Alberti bass is really compound melody, then, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a bass line, sort of, but it's really implying several parts, and we just want the lowest note. We want the bass note out of that. One really neat thing about this is that these chords last how long here? The 1, the 4, 6, and the dominant embellished. This is 3/4, right? 3/4 meter. It's this long. It's this long, spanning them. It goes across those two bars, so it spans these two measures. What's that called when you divide up to hemiola, right on? So you've got what you expect to be. You would expect there'd be 2 chords there, 1 per measure. And pretty much he's led us to feel that way. Now I know it speeds up here, kind of like when the melody lags, the bass takes the limelight and carries the ball. You know, keeps things moving. But generally, with that exception, we've been moving at 1 chord per bar. All of a sudden, the pace picks up, and you get 3 chords per 2 bars. That's faster. So in other words, you're getting 1.5 per measure. You know, it's faster than 1 per bar. That's neat. That's a hemiola, and it makes a neat effect. And in a sense, it even calls more attention to these notes, this note, that, because they're coming in their particular place. And you know, it's almost like syncopation. You feel it coming in a place when you wouldn't have expected otherwise. Here's Daniel Barenboim playing this phrase. So he does a half K in it, or does a PAC here, and does another one with an extension at the end of it. That's the kind of thing we'll be studying later when we deal with Fraser. It's neat. But neat hemiola in there that almost adds to the oomph, the accent that these arrivals get, the 4, 6, and 5.